Hey everybody, welcome to another exciting episode of the Jay Young Show. I have my co-host Jordan Soto. Jordan, you're around somewhere? Are you there? There you go. Oh, and I also have Eric Rice. Eric, I'm really pleased to meet you several years ago, and just honored to have you on the show today. You've been a great inspiration, and you're going to talk today about sovereign capital, and you're going to talk about you. I tell you, it's just so interesting to listen to you and all the different things that you're doing. But welcome to the show, Eric.
Well, thank you, Jay. I appreciate it being here, and feelings mutual in our meeting. Absolutely, and good to see you again, Jordan.
Good to see you again as well.
Well, this is when we start off with a joke. Anybody got a clean joke today? Anybody got a clean joke? I mean, I've got the one about the what did the guy say when he bought the. What did the guy say when he bought the chapstick? Oh, no. What do you call a person that has too much to drink? You call him an Uber. What's that one about the... okay, what did the duck say when he bought chapstick? Put it on my bill. Okay, that's it. That's it for
I thought he was going to say something like, what the quack is this? But I
You guys are both quacking me up.
Oh, there you go. Oh,
Zinger.
Bang.
There we go.
That's awesome.
We're going to get into the dad jokes real quick.
Man, I'll tell you what. I didn't prep everybody for that, as you can probably tell, and I necessarily wasn't prepped that much for it. But hey, you know what? It's all fun, and I'm ready to get into. Eric Eric was with King operating for a while. We enjoyed having him there. He's gone to do more about the mic. He's going to talk about that. He's going to talk about the Rice Report podcast, which everybody needs to make sure that you notify and subscribe to that. It's an incredible bit of information, a lot of information, matter of fact. And we're going to talk about it. And he's also joined us as King's macroeconomic advisor. So, Eric, just kind of start off with a little bit about your background.
Well, geez, my background's all over the place. I've been a serial entrepreneur for the better part of 20 plus years. So I've been in industries ranging from high technology, alternative investments, alternative services. I was one of the original guys in machine learning and the early stages of AI, all that kind of stuff. Ended up in quantum biology and then to oil and gas.
Wow.
And now those things have kind of come together to get into the next phase of the world, which is cryptographic money and privacy money and things like that. So now into the Bitcoin mining space. And I guess media, I don't know, I guess I'm a media guy now. It's the weirdest title I've ever had in my life. Never expected that.
Yeah.
That's kind of how it goes with that as well. So, but I wanted to talk a little bit more about what was it, the quantum, what was that?
Quantum biology. Yeah.
Quantum biology, what is that?
So we were using quantum mechanics with MRI magnets, MRI industrial magnets, to stimulate electron spin. So one of the things we were doing, which didn't work out in the end because Big Pharma doesn't like that, but essentially what we were doing is working at a subatomic level to make natural ingredients, natural products more potent and more effective than pharmaceutical products. And we had to do it through cannabis.
I can see why they wouldn't like it.
What's that?
I could see why they wouldn't like it.
No, they didn't. We didn't get a lot of love there. So plus, there's too much regulation in this country to test new sciences and technology. So we went into the cannabis industry because it was unregulated, and we were making CBD that ultimately was sold in places like Cedars-Sinai and Amazon, which we were the first to do that because of the efficacy of the product. And unfortunately, COVID kind of wiped us out like many other businesses. We went from X amount of money per month, and then COVID hit, and almost all of our clients were doctors. Chiropractors, physical therapists, and we lost about 90% of our income, which was a blessing in disguise because I got to move to Texas and work for Jay. So it worked out perfectly. God always has a good plan for you, always does.
So the big difference or big jump from quantum, what was that? Quantum what?
Quantum biology.
Quantum biology. It's kind of hard for me to put both those words together. But quantum biology to oil and gas. What made you think about oil and gas?
Well, it wasn't on my mind at the time. I was just trying to survive at the time. And when that happened, so quantum biology, again, kind of masked it as a cannabis CBD company. That was the way to do the testing. But at that point in time, company was falling apart. So was the country. That was 2020. And I started seeing what was happening, and I couldn't sit back. I'm just not that kind of person to sit back and watch things fall apart. I want to help. I want to get involved. So moved to Texas, packed up everything I had, brought my family to Texas. We were noticing things like we couldn't go to church. We weren't even church people at the time. We weren't even really faith-based at the time, but I was starting to find God at the time. And in California, I could go to a strip club. I could buy drugs. I could buy alcohol, but I couldn't go to a church. And when that happened, I was like, we need to get out of here. And great story behind that, much longer story.
Why couldn't you go to a church? I don't understand.
They closed them. They said it was. They said faith was unessential.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Imagine that in
No
California.
wonder people move from California.
Oh yeah, I just got a call from another friend yesterday who's doing it. So I came here into Texas and I had no idea what to do. So I started creating patriot groups and organizing First Amendment and Second Amendment advocacy. I started getting involved like as a speaker. Eventually people dragged me online kicking and screaming. I did not want to do it. I liked being online and lurking. And I started hearing a lot of these voice chats and people talking, everyone trying to figure out the world. And I just tried to contribute where I had expertise. So I ultimately ended up starting a Telegram channel out of all places. And always had a Twitter account, didn't use it. I actually haven't used my Facebook account since the 2020 election. And then I started putting stuff online and getting banned everywhere like everyone else. So I've been involved with people previous to working at King for 18 months. I was just a volunteer all over the place. Working with some generals, working with a lot of former politicians, and a lot of businessmen and powerful people, media people, researchers, historians, theologians. I just met so many interesting people along the way, just trying to figure out what's happening in the world. And eventually, I came to a point where I needed to make some money again, and I wanted to do things that served multiple purposes. And when I came to King, I was like, oh my gosh, we have a product that provides an upside. Tax advantage monthly income, as well as a huge tax benefit for investment. And I don't know if your listeners will enjoy this, but tax is theft. It is actually unconstitutional. The income tax did not exist in this country until we had a Federal Reserve in 1913. So I said, hey, let's and we needed American energy. That's right around the time where the Biden administration was shutting down everything in the oil and gas industry against all forms of logic. So I said, if I'm gonna go work for someone, which I haven't done in years, I'm gonna do it with something that I think will provide benefit to the American people. And by the grace of God, we were able to, in my time there, take about $270 million away from the IRS and put it in the ground and drill American oil and provide income. So that was how I got to oil and gas. It was really a service thing. Just how can I make some money and fulfill the duties that I believe America. I really don't care if people argue with me, because left-wingers do all the time because they're brainwashed by a government. Taxation is theft. Avoid it at all costs. Put your money into things that grow, that have tax advantages, so that your family will be wealthy, because wealth is freedom. And people in this country oftentimes don't pay attention to the little things like our energy sector that provides stability in this country. So that was my journey into oil and gas. A lot of trials along the way, Jay. You've kind of seen some of those, but man, I've been made fun of. I've been kicked off of platforms, and now 4 years later, I'm getting invited back onto the platforms and being put in positions where people are saying, I know I called you crazy 3 years ago, but just about everything you said came true. And how do we work through this? So. God's just been leading a lot of things in my life and just trying to follow his will. That's all I can do.
So you've transitioned to wealth management now, and you've talked a lot about how wealth is freedom. So when you're looking at your wealth management in Chicago with your entrepreneurial ventures, what's your current role at Sovereign Capital, and then what is the goal with that to provide more opportunities for people to manage their wealth and grow their wealth in America?
Well, I'm not a wealth manager anymore. So I was at one time. And in that industry, it's so overregulated and improperly incentivized. People in that industry are incentivized to sell products to people that they may not need. And that was one thing that kind of bugged me. So I was a top 30 under 30 at one point with some of the big firms out there early in my career. But with Sovereign, what we're doing really is focusing on, all my partners and I are Bitcoiners. One started many years ago when it was cheap, and the other of us started in 21 and 22. But when you start to understand that the financial system itself in this country is completely centralized and controlled, you start to try to look for off-ramps. So as a macroeconomist most of my life, just observing the market, in 2020, you really started to see tyranny approaching. I mean, I don't think there's anyone out there, even if they deny it with their mouth, they feel it in their heart. and you can feel this tyranny approaching. So as we started to see things in 2023, like FedNow pop up, which most people don't know what it is, they tell you it's so banks can transact faster, which sounds like a good thing, but the back end agenda is complete control of your financial accounts. This FedNow program, right now as we speak, every three-letter agency in the country with a simple password can log into their computer and see all of your financial transactions. And eventually, if they don't like what you're saying on podcasts like this, they'll be able to censor your money. You know, we've seen this in Canada and many other countries. It's coming here. Like, there's no stopping that train at this point. The laws are all set in place. So when you look at Bitcoin, it's completely decentralized. It's completely censorship resistant. It cannot be confiscated unless you give up your own keys, which people have done. They have confiscated Bitcoin. But it's truly freedom money. It's completely outside the system. So for years I was searching, how do I get outside of the system? Especially with what I say on camera. You want to be as cautious with your wealth as possible. And I started going into gold and silver and platinum, and slowly you realize that those are also centralized because central banks own 80% of the inventory in the world. So when we found Bitcoin and you really understand how Bitcoin works, you start to realize that the Bitcoin we talk about on camera all the time is just the currency. The system is what makes that currency valuable, and that system is run by Bitcoin miners who act as a full-time auditor and transaction validator. You know, the Fed itself has never been, I don't know, most people don't know this, the Federal Reserve has never been audited in 111 years. You get audited every year if they want to, but they've never audited the Federal Reserve, whereas Bitcoin is fully transparent to the public and audited every 10 minutes by Bitcoin miners. So we got into this space because we took some of the rules and applications of oil and gas taxes and applied them to Bitcoin mining because we actually use flare gas, ethane, things like that to power these mines, and it provides a tremendous tax advantage, and all of our clients get paid in Bitcoin, so we're decentralizing their money for them with a tax advantage. It seemed like a perfect fit.
There's really like two questions that kind of come to mind whenever I'm thinking about Bitcoin, and one of them is that a lot of people get cautious about Bitcoin. There's obviously things that are going around on social media where people are like, oh, if only you knew who was on Bitcoin and who was really using Bitcoin, you wouldn't want to even touch that platform. So what do you have to say about that component? It's almost like a fear-mongering stance to Bitcoin. And then my second question of that is more related to the energy industry in relation to Bitcoin. So we'll start with that first question, and then we'll go to the next.
Sure. Yeah, the ghost stories are tremendous. I mean, they're everywhere. And there's actually an HBO documentary coming out. HBO now figured out who Satoshi Nakamoto is. It's one of the funniest things I've ever seen. No one knows who it is, and that's actually by design. So in order to, if you don't have just the definition of a security versus a commodity is an asset without an issuer. Commodities have much more relaxed regulations. The government really can't get involved in them because it's like trying to overregulate or burden corn. You know, so by design, it actually avoided regulation by not having a founder. But I've heard them all, the CIA, the NSA, you know, they do use an NSA patent called SHA-256. That is an open source code that anyone in the world can use. It's very transparent. It's on every device that we have here, or every phone, every TV, every camera that we have uses SHA-256 for hashing. So anything that hashes uses that. However, when you start looking at this, I always tell people two jokes. Number one, when was the last time the government made anything that worked for 15 years without needing upgrade? It just doesn't happen. And then you have to understand what decentralization is, because the world itself, not just America, the world has never, in our lifetime, have never experienced what true decentralization really is. So when you look at the founding portions of Bitcoin all the way from the white paper till today, we know who the developers were, Adam Back and some of these, Hal Finney, we know who they are. There was recently a case with Craig Wright, who's an absolute fraud, who I'm sure is going to take credit as Satoshi on HBO. He was just found in European courts not to be Satoshi. Another liar, there's been 15 liars that have come out and said this, but he was an early developer, and in this lawsuit, they had to share all the emails from Satoshi. So now you have linguists looking at it and writers looking at it, and it's very clear that, number one, he was probably more than one person, so a group of people. And when you look at Bitcoin and decentralization, you have to understand that once it was made, they put the key in the lock and they broke the key. So no one can control Bitcoin. There are millions of mining units around the world. People talk about the ghost stories of if the power goes out, what'll happen to Bitcoin? Well, I have a Bitcoin node in my house. So in my attic, I'm running a node. And if the power did go out, as soon as the power came back on, I could reboot myself, reboot the entire Bitcoin network with full transparency in less than 30 seconds. It is really a weapon against the actual system that we have, which is why you see so many ghost stories, so many documentaries, so many people beating on it. I always tell people the only thing that's more gaslit than Donald Trump in this world is Bitcoin. They've spent more money gaslighting Bitcoin and scaring you away from it than they have scaring you away from voting for Donald Trump. Orange man bad, orange coin bad. They're the exact same psychological operations are run against them. But in the end, the ghost stories are fun, they're entertaining. They kept me out of it for years, to be frank. But once you start looking at the system and talking to people who run mines, you start realizing that in order for them to actually to change Bitcoin, you would have to shut down every nation in the world, harvest all the energy, wait a year, harvest more energy. Then you could overwhelm the system through the hash rate for about 10 to 60 minutes before the entire network kicked you out. It's impenetrable. It is the world's largest organic supercomputer that has ever been made. And I think that by itself is fascinating enough to not worry about who made it, because if it is a bad guy who made it and the power does go out forever, we have bigger problems than Bitcoin. I mean, that's just kind of the simple way to think about it.
Well, and that was the next question that I was going to ask is whenever we're talking about Bitcoin or mining for Bitcoin, and I don't know if they mine for Litecoin and altcoin and things like that. I know that there's a lot of different ones out there. But one thing that I've also heard a lot about on social media is how much energy is consumed trying to mine these coins. And so that's another, I'm not sure if that's a fear-mongering tactic or what that is. I'm more curious than anything to kind of understand, like, okay, why are people so nervous about mining it and the correlation with the energy industry?
Well, that's probably the biggest gaslighting out there. So scaring people away from the currency didn't work, right? People were still buying Bitcoin. Then there's a company I won't name because they're a multi-billion-dollar corrupt company that will come after me for saying this because they've already hacked one of my accounts when I started talking about it. There was a corrupt company, another crypto competitor, that paid $5 million to Greenpeace to create an entirely false white paper about the energy usage of Bitcoin in, I think, 2018 or 19. And that scared everyone away because most people won't get this, but corruption runs very deep in this country, and it begins and ends with the media who gaslights everything. Now, the reality behind Bitcoin mining is, yes, it does use a lot of energy. It requires a ton of energy. You know, it cost about $31,000 on our mine. Most mines are around $45,000 or $50,000 to produce a Bitcoin today worth $61,000. And when you look at what we're using to mine these energy plants, 58% of the energy we're using comes from sustainable means. It comes from solar, it comes from wind. Some countries are nuclear. Russia is now building a nuclear plant specifically for Bitcoin mining. And 58% sustainable energy. The oil and gas industry gets no credit for Bitcoin mining because for years and years and years, we've been burning off ethane. So as you drill a gas well, you're burning off flare gas. Bitcoin miners are now harvesting that flare gas and converting it into electrical power to mine to mine Bitcoin, which means that we're eliminating all the carbon emission into the world, putting it into a liquid format, turning it into energy, which the byproduct is actually CO2, which creates beverages. So you look at places like Africa, South America, these third world places, especially Africa. You know, Africa's been held back from growth. They have tremendous resources. And right now, all throughout the continent, there are power plants being built providing energy and running water to people who've never had it in all of human existence. You know, the grid market itself, a power provider won't build a power plant in Africa because they can't make money. So they can't provide the things people need to thrive because they can't earn money. So what's happening right now is Bitcoin miners around the world are working with grid creators, and they're basically saying, if you build a grid in this desolate third world nation to provide energy to them, we will buy all of your energy and mine Bitcoin. Now, the way it works with the grids, because 42% of the energy does come from the grids themselves, and people say, you're stealing all of our energy. It's simply not true. There's a guy named Dennis Porter who puts this stuff out every day on Twitter. He does a great job, as a friend of ours. And the gaslighting in this is tremendous. So let me explain Texas. So when I moved to Texas in 2020, within 3 weeks, there was an ice storm and a snowstorm that took out power for days and days. That was when we had low mining capabilities. In the last 4 years, Texas has become the leading state in Bitcoin mining because of the oil and gas industry. And what's happened here is we haven't had any blackouts or brownouts. And the reason is that power companies buy energy. So they buy more than they need because that's what they're supposed to do. The Bitcoin miners sign a contract for that overusage. So all that excess energy that just gets destroyed in the end, they're buying that to mine Bitcoin. And when the grid is low, they sell the energy at cost back to the grid. So what we're doing is creating a balance for these old grids. Our average power grid in America was built in the 70s. Some of them were built in the 40s. They fluctuate and short circuit a lot. I lived in California. You know, about every 6 months, your house just flickers because the grid is so old. And if they allowed more Bitcoin mining in California, it would actually lower their energy costs and it would provide stability to the grid. So that is one of the biggest, this is a great question because no one ever asks it. It is one of the biggest gaslighting. So put it this way, anything that is called environmentally damaging supports the Green New Deal. The Green New Deal is a global con job to rob all the citizens of the world of about $90 trillion and steal your freedom. Bitcoin is the solution not only to the currency problem, but also the energy balance problem. We use more energy that would be thrown away. Like the project we're doing in Tennessee is completely ethane based. So what we're doing is saving the environment from carbon emissions, processing the ethane into electricity, selling the CO2 byproduct, and then ultimately in the end, we're running a mine that isn't even connected to the power grid while we're reducing carbon emissions. But the press will never tell you that. They'll just tell you about the energy usage in our off-grid project, which they can't see because we're off-grid. But if we actually told them the energy usage, they would put it in the media and say, these guys are using 8.35 megawatts. This is stealing your energy. When what we're actually doing is saving God's planet and providing freedom money. This is one of the most sophisticated gaslighting campaigns that you will ever see because it intertwines money and the environment. It's actually entertaining to watch, but if you actually study it, it's entertaining to watch.
You know, I've heard that the Third World War is already underway and it's a war of misinformation. And so, you know, you have your bias and typically you stick with that and stay in that vein and you build your argument of what you believe. But I have a question for Jay, actually. So Jay, you've invested in lots of different things. When you're hearing Eric talk about Bitcoin and things like that, you as an investor, what is your thought about this investing technique and alternative investments and diversifying your portfolio in this way?
I mean, I know that Eric and I have talked about this a lot, and I'm sitting here thinking about, okay, well, the first thing you think of is, well, I can't see it, I don't understand it. There's this infinite number, there's this finite number, there's this. You can mine them in the oil field with natural gas by putting this, and I'm like, I mean, it just seems like it, but there's so much value in it. I mean, I was going to sign up and get the vault and do the whole, Bitcoin outside my portfolio. I didn't do that, but what I did do is I went in the market in our stock portfolio and I bought Bitcoin. So I still have the same up and down. If Bitcoin goes up, hey, I make money.
It's very scary.
Yeah. But I just didn't do the thing with the vault and the keys and that. I mean, I was like, okay, now that's a whole different. But I did, and I continued to buy it. I mean, it's like, hey, if the price goes up and there's I'm not going to go, hey, well, I'm not going to buy it because I don't understand it. I'm going to buy it because it goes up and down and there is value and you do see that. So I know that there is just, I know there's tons of questions we have here about this, and is this where sovereign capital is this what you guys do with sovereign capital?
Well, no, you're talking about an ETF, and I'm going to get together with you this week, and I'm going to get you in a vault because owning Bitcoin, your own Bitcoin. I don't personally trust BlackRock or ETFs at all, and I don't think anyone should. To be frank with you, I can go into that for days with evidence. But the ETFs they're fantastic for Bitcoin adoption because it makes it easy to enter. That I think is the big part. A lot of people, it hasn't done much for price. It doubled in price. It's going to continue to move with or without Bitcoin or with or without ETFs. But the ETFs are kind of like buying paper gold. And paper gold, there's about 100 contracts written against every ounce of gold. ETFs for Bitcoin aren't there yet, but there are concerns about Coinbase and their accounting. But owning your own Bitcoin and having your own Bitcoin gives you ultimate control. So you actually don't own Bitcoin, you own shares of an ETF, and BlackRock and Coinbase custody that Bitcoin.
So like if you're
behalf.
investing through like Robinhood or Coinbase or something like that, you're not actually owning the Bitcoin, you're owning the ETF that is giving you the share?
Well, an ETF is an exchange-traded fund. So clients' money goes into the fund buys Bitcoin on behalf of the fund, so there has to be Bitcoin correlated, but it's a masked pricing, so it's wrapped. And essentially, owning your own Bitcoin gives you control. So you can, if what happened in Bank of America, and right when I started at King, I was telling a bunch of guys there, I go, within 3 years, you're going to see big problems at Bank of America. And 3 days ago, Bank of America had a freeze out, and about 250,000 people around the country woke up with no money in their bank. I don't know if they've fixed that problem yet. I haven't looked into it this morning, but as of yesterday, these accounts were still zeroed. So having the Bitcoin yourself, Bitcoin hasn't gone down. We've seen 4 different financial institutions drop Bitcoin. Wells Fargo had problems. We're watching cyber attacks all throughout the world. The only thing that's cyber attack proof is Bitcoin. So having that ETF in your portfolio is great to get a toe wet in the pool. But when you really start, then you start studying. And once you start studying the freedom you'll have, you'll realize you can carry around millions or billions of dollars on a little tiny handheld cold wallet and have complete control. Starbucks just started taking Bitcoin in certain areas. These videos are out now. McDonald's is now going to be accepting Bitcoin. El Salvador is building a Bitcoin city where everything will be bought and sold with Bitcoin, and you can't use the ETF for that type of transaction. But it doesn't mean it's not the right play. So I buy Bitcoin for wealth accumulation. I don't spend it yet. I don't want to. I see the trend and I see where we're going. The supply is, right now only 450 Bitcoin are produced per day. 450 throughout the world. That's it.
Wow.
3.5 years from now, that'll be 225 and then 112.50. Every 4 years, it'll reduce the amount of new Bitcoin in circulation. It's all being released through the miners. So you want to have access to that scarce asset. Human beings have never seen anything this scarce. Diamonds, gold, silver, they all still exist. And when the price goes up, we mine more of them. You can't make more Bitcoin. So you want to hold on to that value as best you can. So the ETFs are a great way to get exposure. Eventually, you want to sell out of the ETFs with profit, transition into buying your own Bitcoin, and then you don't ever have to worry about Visa, MasterCard, your bank, the SWIFT system, any of that type of stuff. You can send money all throughout the world in a matter of minutes.
God, I'm scared to death. Hey, what? So all your money, you make money obviously to pay your bills because everybody's not on Bitcoin. Bunch of dumbasses around this world. No, but all of your savings or everything else is in a vault in Bitcoin. Is that? Am I saying that right? Or
well, we call it a vault, but it's actually multi-sig storage. So essentially what it is you're pulling the Bitcoin off of the exchange, you're putting it onto a cold wallet, and then you're actually authorizing a third party, which you don't need to. I'm just not technically sophisticated enough to do it on my own. It's just another layer of protection.
there's people out there smarter than you.
Oh my gosh, so many of them. And they
I know,
all have
I'm
Bitcoin.
like, as you're talking through all of this, I'm like, there's a lot that I'm like grabbing and ingesting, and then there's other things that I'm like, okay, woo, it's going way over my head.
Shaking my head,
I've
scratching
never
my
heard Jay
head.
this quiet in my life.
I'll have to play this back several times and slow it down. Boy from Sulphur Springs. But man, so this is something that you're obviously very, very into, alternative investments or Bitcoin. I know we don't have a ton of time. You're going to be on the summit, which I'm thrilled to have you on the summit. I'm thrilled to have you as our
Same.
macroeconomic advisor, actually. But because you can see how, man, this guy's sharp. You have your Rice report. Talk a little about alternative investments, just to kind of, and especially energy, since King Operating is the one hosting this show. Maybe we should talk a little bit about something about energy.
Absolutely. Yeah. So alternative investments have always been a loophole of the wealthy, right? So your average normal person. I'm a blue collar kid growing up. I hate that Kamala Harris took the middle class kid thing.
Did y'all work at McDonald's together?
No, never McDonald's. Did roofing, did a bunch of crazy stuff. But when you look at the system itself today, we're basically taught from birth all kinds of bad habits because they're simple. You invest in stocks, you invest in bonds. Those are all centralized commodities. There's a central exchange. We're building one in Texas. The stock market itself currently makes no sense mathematically. You're watching gold and the stocks move at the same pace. It's all short-circuiting. So alternative investments provide a lot of advantages that public investments don't, and all alternatives are private. Generally, they have a great tax benefit. They have a lot of income that comes with them, and they provide more profit margins. I used to run a public company. It costs a lot of money just to be a public company, which chews into investor returns. So alternative investments, especially in the energy sector, the tax benefits in the energy sector are literally the best in the world. There's no other country in the world that allows private citizens to invest in their energy sector, or there's few. But when they do, there's no 100% write-offs. So the energy sector itself for an investor is a hedge against taxation that provides monthly income back to them, and with places like King, an upside when you sell the properties. Real estate has been used in this capacity. Trailer parks, all kinds of things are used in this way. And the reason that it's done, especially in the energy sector, is that there's absolutely zero chance that the need for energy in the next decade, the need for oil and gas is ever going to go down. In fact, it's increasing every year with the onslaught of Bitcoin mining and AI and some of these big computing places. You know, most people don't know, I've been saying this for so long, it's the most interesting stat in the world. The cloud that we run our phones on, just that cloud, right, which just means someone else's server, that's what the cloud is. But that computing power for the cloud requires 2 times the amount of energy as the nation of Japan, the 3rd largest economy in the world, just to run the cloud. Most of that is coal, oil, and gas. Natural gas is the next safe haven. It's already been deemed green energy in the UK and in the state of Ohio, and that's going to continue. Oil actually is the same kind of gaslighting. It doesn't damage the environment when you're drilling it. Fracking is water and sand. It's not like a huge thing with all these chemicals that kill the deer and the drinking water. A lot of gaslighting for the environmental Green New Deal. But energy itself right now is super interesting. So about 4 weeks ago, I did a video talking about the inevitability of the weaponization of oil. And yesterday alone, we saw this happen, right? So we actually watched it happen. So there's mounting wars, which aren't going anywhere. These are provocations. They want World War III right now with the election to distract you. There's a lot of things that are happening to push this war. Wars are fought and won with the most energy. And when wars are fought, most of the energy governments need gets siphoned off to the governments, making supply in the market less. The other interesting thing about oil to me is the fact that the SPR, the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, is being drained every month to lower gasoline prices for an election. We have about 10 to 14 days of actual full oil usage for this country in our reserve. It's really dangerous. There's no fuel. I talk to people in North Carolina and Tennessee every day right now. There's no fuel. Fuel becomes currency when things go bad. And that Strategic Petroleum Reserve is designed for national emergencies and times of war. We've just experienced one where our government so graciously gave people $750 of fiat currency that'll be debased 2% every month for the rest of their life. And now we're watching nations around the world trying to harvest oil with the onslaught of war in multiple sectors. And by the way, Lindsey Graham said, let's go out and bomb all of the Iranian oil, which supplies a lot of our enemies. But nonetheless, if our enemies don't have oil, they're going to be buying it from the market, stealing it from Americans who we still buy a lot of oil. The oil market itself right now just has tremendous volatility ahead. The ports are going to be going back online, but that's not final. January 15th, they may strike again. If that happens, we can't import the oil that we can actually refine here. And that's another thing that Jay educated me on years ago. The oil we drill in this country, we can't refine. We have to send it out of the country to be refined. The oil they drill, we refine. This is globalism. This is designed to control markets. And we need to import oil to refine it in our refineries based on the quality of oil. So if the ports close or if there's war, we are going to need to import oil. We can't drill the type, most of the oil we drill here, we export to be refined and sent back. So moving forward, the alternative investments are great. They're going to tax you more. I mean, the Harris campaign is nothing but a big, tax push that somehow people are saying, let's vote for her and have less money. That's going to continue, and there's absolutely no way in the world that oil is not going to be as important, if not more important, for the next decade. In order to build the infrastructure for a new world of computing, you need oil and gas. You need oil to build concrete. You need oil to build servers, to make wiring, to make pharmaceuticals, to make clothing. You need it for everything. So I think that the outlook for me on alternatives, the only money I have in the stock market is I trade the VIX. The VIX is an indicator. When the market crashes, the VIX explodes. I bought the VIX at 1050 a couple weeks ago, sold it at 62 within a matter of minutes. So that's the only thing I touch in the markets, because they are really on. We've been putting a Band-Aid on a bullet hole in this economy and in the market for the better part of 12 to 15 years. And it's just eventually the levee breaks when there's enough pressure. So alternative investments are good.
What are the alternative investments that you look to? Because I'm not sure exactly that that's been outlined in this conversation, or at least I may have missed it.
No, you didn't miss it. I didn't say it. I'm an investor at King, so I'm an oil and gas investor. I think that's number one. It's an American thing to do. Like, we need to drill our own oil. Outside of that, Bitcoin mining, we're definitely considered an alternative investment. I will get into alternative real estate in a couple of years because, and I may be wrong.
What is alternative real estate?
Alternative is just a great way of saying not stock market. Like, it's anything that's not the stock market, not a bond. Like, anything outside of stocks, bonds, and currencies are considered alternative. Just like anything that's not Bitcoin is considered an altcoin. So the staple is
okay, that makes sense.
That's what the altcoin are. But I will get into real estate eventually. Right now, I'm doing private raw land. I think that's a great investment to have to sit on. But as the market, I think we'll see maybe not in certain areas like wealthier towns, but I think you're going to see a correction in the real estate market of 30 to 40% of home values like 2008. And when that happens, I'll be putting money into alternative investment, tax advantage, private real estate deals.
Hey, that's great. I know we need to wrap it up for today. I want to give you an opportunity a little bit more about the Rice Report. Man, just an incredible slew of information. Just knowledge is, wow. What could I expect if I wanted to go over to look at the Rice Report? What do you have today, and what are your thoughts going into end of the year, next year? Tell me more about the Rice Report.
So it started years ago because I want people to see the truth, regardless of what they've been taught. So I created the Rice Report in a manner where I cover the three things that nobody ever wants to talk about. Like, you're trained as from a kid, don't talk about money, politics, or religion. And I hate the word religion. I more say faith. So I talk about those three things combined. So every episode I start out with
You were never a rebel, were you?
Yeah, I mean, like, from birth. But every episode I do a complete financial breakdown of the news. If I'm doing them daily, it'll be the news of the day, the actual stats from the Fed, and explaining to people what I believe is going to happen moving forward. Thank God, I've been pretty accurate for years. But then I get into the politics, because politics affect your money, and ultimately money and politics affect your life, and your life will be volatile dealing with those two things unless you have faith to ground you. And then on Saturdays and sometimes Sundays, I go on live and I give true history. So, like, the stories we've been told of many things, like how the world wars started, all of our wars, the things we've been through, theology. I love history, as you know, and I try to share some of that information in a digestible way. There's a lot of people who can explain things deeper than I can, but I try to keep it very high level where you get something from it. So if you watch an episode of the Rice Report, you'll get some information that'll help you with your pocketbook, with your voting choices, and also with the way that you conduct your life and how to manage the chaos of the world.
Yeah, that's great. I've had people reach out and go, "Oh, Eric Rice works with you?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And they go, "Man, he's just an incredible, knowledge is unbelievable."
I'm just a nerd. That's all I am.
Hey, what would you? I'm not going to steal Jordan's.
I was about to say, don't you steal my question.
Well, I want to say it in a way. I want to say it in a way where Jordan loves the question. What would you tell your 18-year-old self? And I want to say that. What are you teaching Nolan right now? I know you're a big Nolan Ryan fan, and we've talked about that. But what is it that what are you teaching Nolan? Because your 18-year-old self and you're teaching Nolan. If you could go back that far, what would you tell yourself?
That's a great question, actually. I don't know if I've been asked that, but I've been listening to a song by Mercy Me for a few weeks called "Dear Younger Me." And if you haven't heard that song, you should. If you ever, it's a worship song, and it's beautiful. And the first thing that I would tell, the first and foremost, I teach both of my kids to think for themselves. People will tell you things, the news will tell you things, but think critically. Really think through things for yourself. Never conform to the way that other people view things. We live in a very much a groupthink world, and that's the agenda, is that if everyone thinks the same, they're very easily controllable. So I teach my children that. I teach my children to have courage to speak the truth. There is no such thing as your truth or my truth. There is the truth. So seek the truth, speak the truth, and be confident in who you are, no matter what happens. And then in that song, Dear Younger Me, there's a part, it's going to pull at my heartstrings right now thinking about it. It's not your fault. That's another thing that I would tell my kids. When you're a kid and you get in trouble, my kid had detention yesterday. My wife was upset. I go, listen, I spent half my high school career in detention. I learned a lot by that. So when I picked him up from detention and I said, hey, listen, did you learn anything? So my mom used to ask me. And he said, no, not really. And I go, well, you should have, because you just wasted an hour and a half of your life that you're never going to get back. And really learn to appreciate every moment that you have. Money is one thing, your job is one thing, your family is everything, and God is more. And that's pretty much what I would teach my younger me, my 18-year-old self. I knew none of those things when I was 18, except to think for myself. My grandfather was very good about that.
Wow. Sorry, Jordan.
That's okay.
I know.
Whenever I had a pastor once who said that every moment was dripping with significance. You only need to look and pay attention. And I think that what you just said really resonates, I think, with our audience, because Jay and I have talked a lot about how we want to help change people's lives, even if it's just one person a day. Like, we want to provide insight and inspiration to help future entrepreneurs have what they need to get started and to take that next step. And so thinking about alternative ways to invest and the approaches that people can take in order to take that next step in confidence, even if there's not true confidence, but faking it till you make it and going forward, I think, is really important. And so what you said, it definitely resonated with me, and I hope it resonates with our audience as well.
Yeah, hey, me too. And Jordan, I don't know, I can't speak for you, but I don't think I'll ever be on the Ross Report. I mean, I couldn't bring my knowledge up that high. Man, I mean, what are you talking about with me? I mean, anyway, let's not go there. But anyway,
no, I've been very impressed because
I'll tell you what,
there's not a lot of people that can break down complex topics like Bitcoin mining and altcoin and things like that. And so, and I feel like I have a pretty good understanding of it, but it's what I feel like, and Jay, I don't know if you agree with this, but it does feel like it's like the energy industry, in that it's this massive ocean that is all of this information and knowledge, and you can dip your toe into it, but there's like just this tiny little bit that and then of course with the restriction of information, not just on the energy industry side, but also on that Bitcoin mining and altcoin mining, altcoin investing sector. Like, there's just so much information out there, and there's definitely a need to understand both industries much better.
Oh, there is. Well, I'll tell you what, we're going to be really busy the next week with the Oil and Gas Investor Summit. We've got a lot of things going on. Eric's going to be on. Jordan, me and you are on an episode where you flip the mic on me and ask me questions about oil and gas and about our family history. But I'll tell you what, Eric, it's been just incredible to have you on the show today with your insight. Go to the Rice Report. Go to Sovereign Capital, SOVRN, right? Not sovereign. It's SOVRN Capital. If you want to know more about Bitcoin, if you want to know more about just a wealth of information, Eric, thank you so much for being on today. Appreciate you being here, and look forward to the next episode of The Jay Young Show. Jordan, thanks, and we'll see y'all back here again.
Thanks, guys.